All right, we're going to get started. Hi, everyone, and welcome to another HDBC online meetup series. It's unbelievable. We are almost, we're past halfway through the year. We're in the midst of the summer. Thanks, everyone, for taking the time of your summer days. I mean, it's probably not the nicest day, hour of the summer right now with the summer storm rolling in. So this is probably, the good use of the time to be here. And we have an amazing session tonight. We have Hoordad with us here. Hoordad is a very well-known architect in Toronto, very well established, and he has kindly offered to present to us tonight about mixed use and multifamily development. I will do a little quick intro. So a little disclaimer here. All the information provided here is for educational and general information purpose only and does not constitute investment or professional advice or offering of securities. HDBC Group and myself, Ali Nazarian, do not endorse any product, person, investment opportunities. Participants are responsible for obtaining independent legal, accounting, financial advice from licensed professionals before making any decisions. So with those fun things out of the way, so for those who are new to the HDBC Group, so Housing Developers and Builders of Canada Group, it was established in 2021. It was something that I was, scaling my development business, and I noticed there's a gap for education. It's been traditionally kind of a big boys club. But in an effort to change that, I created the Facebook group, and about a year later, we started doing these webinars. So we all know there was COVID back then, and so we started this as an online, meetup, and we kept it this way because we have participants from all over Canada joining us. So the idea is to foster conversation, sharing of ideas, resources, and knowledge among those involved in land development and building houses in Canada from beginner to seasoned. And we all know this is a very relevant topic these days with the housing crisis that we are facing. So there's need for more developers to get into the market and create more housing for Canadians. So a little bit about myself. My name is Ali Nazarian. I'm sure you've figured that out by now. I'm a real estate investor, developer, and coach. I have a passion for growth, creativity, and sustainability. I started investing myself in 2016. My first development project was in 2017 in Alberta, with building a duplex house. And the same year, I founded Equalux Developments with the goal of developing and building energy-efficient residential buildings. Previously, I worked in the industry, about 13 years in engineering, project management, and risk management. I'm a mechanical engineer by trade, which really helps me in this field. And I'm doing a little bit of land development coaching as well with Wealth Genius Group. And tonight's guest, a very special guest, Hoordad is a registered architect in Ontario. He has over 30 years experience in architecture. And I'm sure after today, once you see the logo of Icon Architects, you will start seeing all the signs around anywhere in the GTA and Golden Horseshoe or Greater Golden Horseshoe. And so I won't read through all this. Without further ado, I'll pass it to Hoordad. Hoordad, please take it away, and the stage is yours.
Perfect. Ali and Mary, thank you very much for setting this up. It's an amazing opportunity to connect with people, like-minded people who are interested in multifamily and mixed-use land development. I'm going to just start my slides, and then I can sort of continue talking on the slides. So I'm just going to share the screen here. Is it okay? Everybody can see this?
Yep, looks good.
All right. Well, this is our sign. My name is Hoordad Ghandehari. I'm a registered architect with the Ontario Association of Architects. Our office in Toronto was established in 2008. And so it's been about 15 years. We have about 60 or so, I always lose track, of ongoing multifamily projects in all of Ontario. I mean, when you see if you see the map on the right, all those red dots are projects, whether something we've worked on before or are working right now on. We have dozens of built projects and many under constructions in all of Southern Ontario. We do projects as far east as Oshawa, Curtis, and as far west as Niagara Falls. The scope of our services is we do feasibility studies for land developers. We do consulting, we do schematic design, take them through city PAC meetings. PAC meetings are, PAC stands for pre-application consultation. So whenever you have a design, you have a project that you want to take through approvals, the city asks you for a PAC meeting. So before you actually apply or submit an application, there's a pre-application consultation meeting that they allow you to go in there and show them what it is that you want to do, sort of get the temperature of the city. Then we go through we do the city approvals, assist our clients with the city approvals, rezoning, where you change the use, OPA, which stands for official plan amendment, and site plan approval, SPA, and etc. Then once all of that is done, we do the design development portion, permit, tender issued for construction administration, and then the sun shadow analysis. That is the scope of work of our architectural practice, which is pretty similar to what others do when they deal with multifamily and mixed-use residential. Now, for those of you who may not know what mixed use is it's pretty evident. I think it just means that it's a development where there are more than one uses to that development, whether it is a combination of commercial and industrial, commercial and office, or office and residential, commercial and residential. That would be called mixed use. Multifamily is multifamily. Anything other than single family would be multifamily. I'm going to talk a little bit about the whole process of going through a project from zero to the end. It starts with two main consultants. These two main consultants are the planner and the architect. And a lot of developers, first-time developers, don't quite know what is the role of each one in this whole process. Now, I might also, I forgot to mention something, that this presentation is basically beneficial to a couple of groups of people. It could be beneficial to people in the industry, although they're people who have been in this industry for a few years already know most of what I'm about to talk about. In first-time developers, investors, it'd be great for them. And recent architectural grad students who are entering the job market, or architectural graduates from overseas that are getting into the job market in Ontario, and basically new architects in Canada who are getting into. But I mean, as you may know, architecture is a very diversified field. This is only the sector of architecture that deals with mixed use and multifamily. That's 90% of what we do. So anyhow, getting back to the issue of the planner versus the architect. So what the planner does is basically identifies the official plan and the zoning parameters of a project, assesses the viability of approvals. If you're looking to do something, they study it. They tell you whether what is the likelihood of it getting approved. assess the climate and temperature of authorities and recent developments in bylaws and any bills that have come out. Recently, a lot of bills have come out from the federal and from the regional government. And they review recent applications that have been submitted. They review recently approved applications, provide planning opinion, and then they provide planning rationale. So anything to do with documents that should be studied. Basically, an investor, a developer has a piece of property in mind. The first thing they want to do is hire a planner and an architect to sit down and see what could be done there. Now, the planner could tell you what is the likelihood of getting a mid-rise or a high-rise or a low-rise approved with how many floors, how big, how wide. And then it is the architect could tell you, that could look at it in conjunction with the planner and then translate that into a building. It could be very schematic. What is what we call a feasibility study. We talk to the planner, we get the parameters. For instance, let's say the planner says, you know what, we could probably get a 10-story building on this site. Now it's my job, our job, the architect's job, to translate that into, okay, how many square meters are we talking about? How many units are we talking about? How many underground garage floors do we need? How many parking spaces could we do? Does the loading work? Can people move into this building? What is the landscape area? What are the sustainability elements that could be put into this building? Basically, it's the functional design of the project, and it could have many degrees and levels in the beginning. It doesn't have to be that detailed. We just want to know how many units, how many square meters of floor area are we talking about? And then, well, what if we have 11 floors? What if we have 8 floors? How do you assume the cost of construction? How do you work it so that you have a lower cost of construction in the long run? And we also coordinate the submission package that needs to go to the city. Now, when the planner, the architect go for a pre-application meeting to the city comes back with, if your proposal is reasonable to them, they come back to you with a list of studies that have to be prepared to be submitted to the city as a rezoning application. Now, rezoning means a change of use. You want to change the use of a property. Let's say today it's a car wash. It's an employment use. You want to turn it into mixed-use residential. That's called the rezoning. So they'll come back to you with a list of requirements that you're going to have to go back, prepare. A part of it is the actual design to a certain level. And then they may usually need a civil engineering package, grading, stormwater management. They need a parking study, a transportation study. They need maybe a wind study, a sun shadow analysis. They will need landscape design. And so they list all the things that they may need from you to help you show them what it is that you're trying to do. And then the client, the developer, would have to go and hire all these different consultants that would help prepare the total package to then come back and submit to the city. Now, once you submit to the city takes their time and they look at all the submitted material, and then they get back to you with their comments. So they send you back a list of comments that you will go through, and then maybe you make modifications and then you resubmit. Now, recently, a couple of changes have taken place in Ontario, and that is that they are now requesting, this is as of April, a 2-stage PAC meeting. I'm not going to get into that a lot because the city now has been given a deadline of 120 days to be able to they only have 120 days to turn the submitted rezoning application around and let you know whether it's a yes or no. That's why the bulk of the work now is happening before you actually submit. So they have a PAC meeting phase 1 and a PAC meeting phase 2. But I don't want to get into too much detail on that. But basically, whether it is in PAC phase 2 or it's a rezoning stage, all of this material needs to be submitted to the city. They review it, they get back to you, they let you know what needs to be changed. So maybe there's multiple submissions happening. And then you submit for your site plan approval. And then that's when you know that you have the right to build whatever it is that you were intending to build on this property in the first place. So we just go to the approvals. The work of the architect could be sort of divided into 2 general stages. One is dealing with the approvals, which is the initial design, includes schematic design, going through the official plan amendment, rezoning, minor variance applications, committee of adjustments, site plan approval. All of that is just getting the approvals on paper that whatever it is that we do is now allowed to do. So that happens up to that. The next stage is when the drawings, you have the right to build whatever you want to build. Now you have to draw the proper drawings for it to be able to construct from those drawings. So those are called contract documents. So you do the contract documents, do the minimum permit application, which is part of the contract documents, by adhering to the local building code, and then you get into construction, and then the construction administration that the architect has to do. So these are the 2 major stages of work that we do. Now, I talked about the official plan. The most important document that you want to look at as an investor, as a new developer, is the official plan. What is the official plan? The official plan is a document that gets updated every 5 to 10, 15 years. And it identifies lands in a city, and it talks about what is the future outlook of the use of these parcels of land in the city. Now, as you can see on the right-hand side, you see the map. This is a portion of the map of the city of Toronto. It's got colors on it. So the colors are official plan designations. It does not necessarily mean that, let's say, red is called mixed use. That does not mean that today there is a mixed use development there. No, this means that the city is foreseeing having mixed use development in those areas. The yellow is neighborhoods. So in the document of the official plan, you could read through what does yellow mean, what can you do when you're in a yellow area, what can you do when you're in an orange area, blue, purple, whatnot. So that is the official plan. That's the first document you look at to see if you got a piece of property, what color is it in the official plan? What is the designation? What is the city seeing there happen in the next 10, 15, 20 years. So what you want to do is basically in line with what they're thinking of doing, then you're in a pretty good shape. Well, then all it hangs on is basically what you want to do within the scale that they're looking for. That's another matter. So in the official plan, you may have they may outline okay, if you want to do mixed use in the area that we've designated as mixed use, fine, then you don't have to amend the official plan, we're good. But okay, now we do this as long as you're under, let's say 20 floors, under 10 floors, as long as your floor space index is under 4, or your density unit per hectare, unit per acre is under this much, as long as your height is under 50 meters, 40 meters, and as long as you comply with the angular planes or step backs that have been provided as the subcontext in the official plan. There is another thing called the secondary plan. Now, what is the secondary plan? A secondary plan is the same as the official plan, except that certain areas of the city, they've done a more extensive study on. So you want to take a look and make sure if your property falls into the secondary plan area, then you don't have to worry about the official plan. You just read the secondary plan, because this is a more detailed explanation of what they want to see in those areas. These are areas that they've studied further. So the secondary plan basically trumps the official plan. Sample of that is, I'm just showing a sample. One of the secondary plans is the Central Finch area official plan. Central Finch area secondary plan that in detail explains, okay, which properties are considered mixed use area A, mixed use area B, mixed use area C, and then in the body of the text, it explains what each one means and what is the maximum that you could do on each checkered area. Now, if you deviate from that, you will need an official plan amendment. If you deviate from the secondary plan, if you deviate from the official plan, let's say they say you can only do 5 stories, and in the official plan now you want to do 6, although your use is the same, but you want to change the height from 5 to 6, and now you have to do an official plan amendment. It's not an additional stage. It can be done concurrently with your rezoning application. Now, this just is one project, 2 projects that we have done before. The one on the right, this is low rise. So I'm just going to start with low rise. The rest of the discussions would be low rise, mid rise, and high rise. This is basically what we do. So I'm starting with low rise here. On the right is a project that we did about, I would say, was constructed and occupied about 10 years ago. Bayview Avenue, just across from Sunnybrook Hospital, if you guys know where that area is. And on the left is just completed close to the intersection of Beecroft and Churchill in North York. For that project, if you could see this map, this, I'm just going to mark this. This is the project. Now, this is North York, this is Churchill Avenue, and that's the one on the right, is I'm putting an arrow on, is Yonge Street. So this is Yonge, this is Churchill, and a blue line that I'm just going to draw here shows basically the separation between what's on the right that is designated as mixed use and what's on the left is designated as neighborhoods. So if you look on the official plan map, you'll see the area on the right of the blue line colored as red, the area on the left colored as yellow. So for this project, we went and we looked at the official plan. The official plan said, well, in the yellow area, you can do up to 4 stories, provided you're in the context, provided you're compatible to the context that this building is going to be sitting in. Now, although what we did here is actually 4 stories, the city still objected because they didn't think that the context was there for this, and therefore this project had to go through an OMB process, which is now called an OLT process, which basically means you don't reach a conclusion with the city and then you are referred to the court of law. Then you go make your case, the city makes their case, and then a judge decides on the fate of the project. So that's what this project did, but our client was successful, and this is now built and is being occupied now. Now mid-rise. Okay, low-rise is basically referred to any buildings between 1 and 4 floors. Mid-rise buildings, 1 and 3 floors, basically. What mid-rise buildings are usually from 4 to 5 floors up to about 11, 12 floors. So that's what mid-rise means. Although I have come across different municipalities having different interpretations of what is considered a mid-rise and what is considered a high-rise. But that's generally what is being is accepted. To do mid-rise buildings on a site, again, you got to go through, look at the official plan, you got to go through what the zoning is, you got to go through all of that. There are other guidelines as well. The most important one is called the Avenues and Mid-Rise Building Study that the city has come up with. It's been about 10, 15 years. And based on the existing infrastructure of the city, they have designated some of the roads in the city as avenues. Now, it really has nothing to do with whether the street is called an avenue or not. It is a designation. So there is a map. This map shows, within the mid-rise guidelines, this map shows, okay, what is considered an avenue in the city of Toronto. Now, if you're considered an avenue, then you would be following these guidelines. Now, these guidelines talk about, okay, how tall is it appropriate for a mid-rise building to be, which is usually, although I should also mention this, that although this applies to avenues, only nowadays it's being used all over, whether you are part of an avenue or not. These performance standards are being used to design mid-rise buildings in the city. So what it is saying is that the maximum height you can go is should be equal or no more than the width of the right-of-way. Now, what is the width of the right-of-way? A right-of-way is from the property line, one side of the street, to the other side of the street, and anything in between. So it includes the curbs, the sidewalks, the trees, the paver, the paving, where cars drive, and all of that would be considered the right of way. So you can't build more than that, and then there are requirements to have a certain height for a street wall, and then you go up 80% of the right of way, and then you do an angular plane of 45 degrees. So your building has to fit basically within that. An example of what we've done, this project is still going through a rezoning process. This is 635 Shepherd Avenue East, which is on Shepherd Avenue between Bayview and Leslie on the south side. And we initially did an 11-story building. And then we went back and we added another floor to it, but then pushed the top floor further back to minimize the impact. And so the height is approximately just a little bit over the width of the right-of-way on Shepherd Avenue. And there's 145 units in it, 2 levels of parking. And there are other requirements that we have to watch out for, which are, for instance, a taller ground floor height to house commercial if your building is a mixed-use building. Even if not, they still do want to have a taller ground floor. For this project, we thought about doing something that would be considered a landmark building. A landmark building, what we consider a landmark is a building that basically is tied visually to the site that it's located. So you can't really mistake it with any other building. And then mostly a building that could be appreciated, could be remembered by just the silhouette of the building. So the outline of the building would be unique. That is what is called a landmark. I'm going to give you another example here. This is Yonge and Shepherd. Those buildings are not done by us, but it's a good example to show. I believe it's called the Emerald Building, the green one in the middle. As you can see on the top of this building, you can basically tell which building it is, even if you're like 3 kilometers away. Even if you can't see any details, you can distinguish this one, but there is no way to tell which one this is if you are a few kilometers away. As a matter of fact, even less than that. it looks like any other building. So that's what we call a landmark. This is a cross section. This is a detailed drawing, more for the architects to appreciate and understand. So this shows how a building is set back from the property line from basically complying with the angular plane on the front and how the garages work. This is a site plan that we have to make sure that the client has to make sure that everything could work regarding the city wants to also make sure. For instance, how does a garbage truck get in? Something as simple as that. How does a garbage truck get in, collect the garbage, and go out? So you show that this is how it's done. There are parameters, turning radii, spaces that you need, that you have to know to demonstrate to the city that this building could function. Where do cars park for people to move into this building? How does drop-offs happen? How does an Uber driver come and deliver something? There are other things that the city will want is a certain size and number of units for families. So basically, it's called a document. The document is called Growing Up Studies, and it is allowing for units for families to live in. So every development you do within the city of Toronto, you'd have to comply with this guideline that asks for at least 10% 3 bedrooms and 15% 2 bedrooms. The rest of them, you could actually have any size and type of units you want. You can have more 2 bedrooms if you wish, or 3 bedrooms, but those are the requirements. Recently, another bylaw has passed that within the city of Toronto, there used to be a minimum parking requirement. Now there is a maximum. So the maximum number is pretty high, so we don't really have to worry about that. But the maximum number most of the time is basically what used to be the minimum before. But now they've realized that that is not really helping. Besides, it's not really the city that should be concerned about how many parking spaces you need. Is whatever number you need to sell your units. This is a business. It has to work. So even if the city says, you know what, I don't care, put 0 parking. We don't care at all. You go do your building, put as many cars as you need. You're not going to go with 0. You got 154, 160 units in here, for instance. There is no way you could sell all of them without a parking spot. So you will go and actually you will put as many parking spaces as you think you may need to sell the units with. So it is important to realize that this building industry for multifamily residential is a business, and it actually has to work, regardless of the bylaws. It actually has to work. You have to provide parking unless your unit's extremely small or your building is situated extremely close to a transit hub, close to a subway, close to a subway stop, close to many lines of buses or whatever that allows you to have a building and sell those units without a parking spot. When we design buildings, mid-rise buildings, there are different types of floor plans that we use, but mostly what you see is our slab buildings, slab plate buildings for mid-rise buildings. I'm saying slab versus a point tower, which I'm going to get to in the coming slides, but slab building is where you have a corridor in the middle, which is that, and then you have units on either side. That is called a slab building. And what is important is to consider when you're designing a building, designing or looking at a property, you want to figure out, okay, well, how many units am I going to get per level? You ask your architect. Well, what we do is we look at, okay, how many units can I get on one side of the corridor, and how many can I get on the other side of the corridor? Now, how do we do that? We do that by determining what our grid line spacing is and what we can fit within each one. I can fit let's say a one bedroom here with a certain depth that gives me a unit that's about 550 square feet. So that's good. That becomes a unit. So now I follow certain grid line dimensions, and then that tells me, okay, that's how I'm going to build the building, and these are the number of units that I can get. How do I get this dimension? That is based on room sizes. So how do I know, let's say, for instance, I got 20 feet or 21 feet. That's the width of this unit. How do I know that that works? That is based on the unit layout. So for instance, you've got a unit that needs windows into a master bedroom, into a living dining room. So if you have a bedroom that is 10 feet wide, and then you have another 10-foot wide living dining, and you add all the walls in between, you get about 21 feet. So that determines what your wall to wall or the width of each unit is. Now, this may be different right downtown Toronto, where everything's so small and purchasers are acceptable of smaller room dimensions. But that is not the case if you want to buy, let's say, a unit in Newmarket. People up in Newmarket are used to more generous size width of living room, dining room, and all the other spaces. Whereas I have actually seen bedrooms as narrow as 7 feet wide downtown Toronto, and they sell. So where the project's located really has an impact on what room sizes. Now, again, these are not what the architects determine, because this is market related. And again, going back to the fact that this is a business, this is mostly for years of people who are in the building industry or in the development industry. They must also either do their own homework to determine what type of a market they're in. Are they in the market that could respond to 300, 400 square foot units, or are they in the market for 800 square foot units? Are they in the market that an 8-foot wide bedroom sells well? Or do people in that area that they're working will not look favorably upon any bedroom that's less than 10 feet wide? So these are things that either they hire a marketing company to help them, or they do their own homework based on what has been happening around whatever their property is, what other developers have done, what has been able to sell better in those locations. I wanted to go to the next slide and I closed it. So I got to open it up again. Give me a second. There you go. Now I gotta go and find, okay, there you are. Now, this is a plan of a point tower. The difference between a point tower and a slab building is you've got a central corridor, a central core of elevators and stairs, and the units are now wrapped around it rather than having a long corridor with units on either side. So this is called a point tower. A point tower is usually used for high-rise buildings. Now, you may once in a while come across a mid-rise building that has a floor plate like that. It might just be the dimensions of the site that would dictate that. But usually mid-rise buildings are slab, and point towers are always either a very short slab or a central corridor with units around it. In any case, I've now sort of jumped into the high-rise or portion of my presentation. High-rise buildings are anything above 12, 13 stories. Although something that has been recently introduced to the city of Toronto is a concept that that's called tall mid-rise, where mid-rise buildings up to 16 stories have been allowed for in some jurisdictions in the city, and the city is becoming more and more acceptable of a tall mid-rise. But generally, anything above that would be considered a high-rise, and what the high-rise guidelines want you to do is, as a designer or as a developer, is to have towers that are not too fat. That's why they have a requirement of having a floor plate of not more than 750 square meters. So it is a lot easier to calculate how many square meters you get when you have a point tower. You just assume 750 square meters per floor, multiplied by the number of floors that you want to put on your land. But now, another thing that the tall building guidelines is asking for is for the buildings not to be sitting on ground just by themselves, these towers. They want to see a podium. Now, what is a podium? A podium is a lower scale building further proud of the tower that helps scale down the building for the pedestrians, for the vehicles, for a human scale that is appreciating the street from a pedestrian's point of view. And what we really don't want is these towers to come all the way down from all sides. It is very overbearing in terms of scale. So they want these towers to be stepped back from the podium, and the podiums to basically respect a height that is more or less relevant to the scale of the street and the other buildings in the area. If you have multiple towers on a site, the tall building guidelines wants you to have at least a 25-meter separation between the buildings. And if your building is sitting next, let me just go to the next slide. Maybe I can explain it on the floor plan. Like, for instance, this is a multiple tower high-rise plan of a project that we're working on. So basically what they want is they want a 25-meter separation between the towers. Now, this allows for not only more than adequate privacy between the two towers, but also it allows views and sun to penetrate in between the towers for the pedestrians, for the public realm that sits around these towers. If you have them too close together, it starts to look like a very tall wall. And if the building is sitting next to a property, let's say, that belongs to another person, they want you to have 12.5 meters of a separating distance to that property, and they want the next door developer to also respect that. So ultimately, you will end up with the same 25 meters between the buildings. So this is another requirement of the tall building guidelines, which you see being enforced all over the city of Toronto. And that's why you don't see too many very fat buildings as you would have seen. You would still see them, but they were all built in the 50s and the 60s. As if you look around the city, you see all these rental buildings that were built in that era. They were following a completely different mentality for urbanism, which is called the tower in the park concept, well, where they develop a piece of property, they plunk in these buildings. These are very wide and fat buildings. Either they're very long slab buildings, or they have like 3 wings, star shaped, and these buildings are surrounded by green area. So none of these buildings are sitting next to the street. Well, that type of an urban design philosophy is outdated and no longer being followed by the city. Right nowadays, everybody wants the buildings to be next to the street, adjacent to the street, to frame the street, and not be separated from the street by that huge amount of green space that is really not safe to have, especially at nights. Nobody's looking at the street. The street is not safe. The green area is not safe, and it is not the most efficient use of land. So that is being outdated. This is what is being followed nowadays. This is just a view of this project. It shows the separation between the 2 towers, helps the view, the sun, and everything else. Another project that I just wanted to share with you guys that we've done in, this is also built and occupied. You may remember this building. Driving down the QEW, if you go to or travel from Hamilton to Niagara Falls, it is located along QEW on the lakeside. It's at the city of Grimsby. It's called the LJM Towers, and it's got 260 units. It is a phased development. Now, I'm just going to quickly tell you what a phased development is. A phased development is when the development is too big to be sold and built all at once. That's how they phase it. So first phase gets approval, gets financing, and starts construction. And then once this is being occupied, the next phase may start, or it may start 2 years later. But then with a phase project, you have to make sure that each phase could work independently if the next phase is being started later on. It's another view of this proposal, or not a proposal, sorry, a building that we completed. This was completed, I think, that maybe 5-6 years ago, occupied and everything. This was a piece of property that was mixed use. So nowadays, there's a lot of talk about mixed use, and the city really wants to see mixed use buildings. There's a lot of things that are benefits of a mixed use building. It is the best use of infrastructure. If you have power, if you have sanitary, if you have sewer, if you have electricity, everything, if the buildings are multi-use, then and if the uses are peaking at different hours of the day, and that means that's the best use of the infrastructure that's there. For instance, assume a building that's an office building. This office building, if it's just one use, what's going to happen is that after 5-6 o'clock at night, nothing in that building is being used. So, but if it's a mix of uses and the peak of the use differs from one use to the other throughout the day, that is the best use. Another thing that I can think about is parking, for instance. If you have a mixed-use building, let's say a mixed-use building that's got offices and residential. Now, the parking levels, let's say the visitor parking only. During the day, it may be full because the office is working. During the night, the office people are not there, but then the residents have the visitors. So it's always going to be full. So it's the best use that a mixed-use building could bring to the infrastructure. It's very efficient. However, there is a place for it. Unfortunately, for this building, in the middle of nowhere, was not the most suitable location to have mixed use. But it still is best use for the land. But how do you make this work? Because if you have commercial at the grade at the bottom of the building, most likely the way that it could survive is by having a lot of foot traffic. So imagine Yonge and Bloor, Yonge and Shepherd, Yonge and Eglinton, there's a lot of people walking by. So if you have a small store, small business, just on people walking by, you could survive. But if you have a small shop in the at the bottom of a building where there is not a lot of people walking by, then your customers would have to drive to you. And if you're a small business, it is not likely for people, even if the designer allows for them to go park in the underground garage, if you want to buy a carton of milk, you're not going to take the trouble going into a building, going down a floor of parking, finding the elevator or the stairs, come upstairs, go to the store. You're just going to drive a bit further till you find a plaza, park your car, and go buy your milk. So it won't really work for small businesses if parking isn't provided accessible to these commercial spaces. For a mixed-use building, if you're looking at small shops, then parking has to be accessible for the users, or there's got to be foot traffic. So even if there's parking, on-street parking, that's still fine. You could just park your car, go in and do your shopping. Or if there's parking nearby at grade, then maybe there's a green P, maybe there's other types of paid parking, that could still work. But if you want to rely solely on people going to the underground garage to park to go to a hair salon, that's not going to work. But what we did on this building was we realized the fact that these small commercial spaces may not function if we only allow them to go to the underground garage to park. So what we did is we created an elevated landscape podium that you can see here in the center. So we said, you know what? These commercial spaces need parking, fine. We're going to give them parking at grade. But what we're going to do, because if we do all parking, and then we lose any sort of a landscape that the residents may need. So we just elevated the landscape up above the parking spaces. We provided these bridges to the buildings where people could actually walk from the second floor onto this landscape podium, enjoy it, have a better view of the lake, and hide the parking at the same time. So that way, if you want to go to one of these shops or commercial spaces, you can just park at grade and go around, which is extremely convenient. And if you are living in these units, you could basically enjoy the outdoors. We just separate them vertically. Here's another view. Again, shows parking at grade, building above. This is that landscape podium, and you can see these bridges that are connecting the two buildings to this outdoor green area. This was basically my presentation. Thank you very much for listening. And if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them. I don't know how many questions there are going to be, but we'll do our best to answer as many as we can.
Amazing. Thank you, Hoordad. Wow.
My
Was that
pleasure.
amazing or what, everyone? Show some love. This was really awesome. These are some of the really important things that as developers, like, we're not trying to be architects, but it always helps to have this knowledge, like thinking like an architect, thinking like the end user, and considering these when you look at a piece of land and you want to see what you can do. These are really valuable information. These are the things that you need to be thinking about. So thank you, Hoordad. That was a really amazing.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure.
Wow, that's a lot of love in the chat. That's awesome. That's awesome. All right. Any questions, everyone?
By the way, can you guys see me? Because I don't see myself.
Yeah, we see you.
Oh, okay. Because I usually on Zoom, I can see myself, but here, nothing.
Might be your view, like the view you have chosen.
I don't know. Well, okay.
Yeah, but yeah, no, I think that was really like these are some of the things that, like I said, everybody has to consider when they're doing you know, a development or considering a piece of land. And so Hoordad, what are okay? Tressa has a question. Go ahead.
Hi, Hoordad. Thank you so
Hi.
much. That was very, very informative, and I'm so thankful. This is like, very timely for us, because my sister and I, who's in the call as well, Sugar, we have a project in Welland, and we actually just did a pre-consultation today with the city, where we have a property under contract. And we're trying, and the zoning of it is right now is allowed to build up to 8 stories. Okay.
Mhm.
Now we had a pre-consultation today, and for the most part, it was actually positive and favorable. The city is very, open to accepting our plan. Now, the only concern we have is, the building code. Would it allow for us to kind of, because the lot itself is small, right? And the fire truck may not have enough room to kind of go in and out. So my question is, would your firm be able to, we haven't engaged any architect,
Right.
right? And my
Yeah.
question is, would your firm be able to, how long does it take for your firm to kind of look at this type of plan to kind of, see if it would be able to kind of accommodate that?
Sure, no, not a problem. Just you have my contact information. Give me a call and we'll discuss it. We'll look at it and let you know whether we can help you out or not. Do you? I had my contact information on and up. Did you take a photo of it or anything?
I didn't get a chance to, but
All right.
I got it.
Ali have it.
Well, you were mesmerized by what I was talking about, so you forgot to do that. I can understand.
I took a screenshot, sister, so
Yeah,
I got
okay.
it.
Okay,
All right,
there you go.
I'm just gonna open it up again and leave it on. There it is.
All
Yeah,
right.
everybody take a screenshot.
So if we call you and talk to you about it, you'd be able to look at it and,
Yeah, sure.
give us.
No problem.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Maybe Hoordad, for anyone might be curious, that I drove past that building in it's in Stony Creek, right?
Grimsby, yeah.
Or Grimsby, and I always wondered about that wall on the.
Well, you know what?
Yeah,
I forgot to talk about
that for everybody.
Yeah, let me just talk about that. Okay, let me just quickly
That was a really interesting story about that.
Yeah, forgot to tell that story altogether. What happened was that in the beginning, when our client came to us and wanted to do a building here, there were no other buildings literally around. It was just low-rise buildings, and he was pretty nervous. He didn't know whether he was going to be able to sell these units or not. So he said, well, what can we do to make these units as marketable as possible? Well, we said, you know what, we could face them all towards the water. Well, we said, how can you do that? So, well, we just, instead of doing a corridor in the middle and units on either side, where I told you about a couple of slides back, we're just going to do a corridor with every unit on just one side. which is exactly what we did. That's why this building looks so narrow, because what you got here is basically you got on this side, you just have corridors, and all the units are just facing the water.
Amazing.
Creatively, it was called water view. So anyhow, then design wise, we were thinking, okay, well, we know how to make, when you're looking at a building and you see all these units, well, it already tells you what it's going to look like. You're going to have windows, you're going to have balconies, you're going to have window frames, operable windows, vents, this and that. So that sort of makes your elevation look the way it is. But what happens if you actually just have corridors? So how do you dress that up? And that is basically what you see here. What we did is, like behind this facade, that what we did, we said, you know what, let's make it look like a painting. So behind all of these windows are just corridors. There's nothing else. So we came up with this Mondrian style artwork that is comprised of different boxes that have different shades of colors to them, and windows that either go horizontal or vertical or are larger. Basically, we came up with a harmony with a seemingly random way of, this is random by design. This is not random where we just close our eyes and threw these boxes on the face of the building and ended up looking this way. It was designed to look random. And especially at night when you drive by, all these corridors have lights in them. And you see these lights, whether horizontal, vertical, it looks pretty amazing when you drive by it. So basically, what I was trying to say is that these are all just corridors, but they're dressed up so you can't really tell they're just corridors. It's not a blank wall, and it's something interesting and different to look at, as well as a landmark for the city of Grimsby, because before this building went up, even I had trouble distinguishing whether I'd gotten to Grimsby or not, because there's not really any building. It wasn't. Well, now there's more buildings there, but there was no landmark where it would tell you, you've gotten there. So when we started, now there's more interesting buildings that have been built around it. So now as a combination of multiple towers there, you could actually see, but this was the first one.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you. I can actually attest to that. I used to live in St. Catharines, used to drive back and forth to Toronto. And every time I got to this building, I knew I'm getting close.
All right.
That's awesome. Thank you.
My pleasure.
If nobody else has a question, I want to ask another question. If you could go back to that development in North York, when you had to go to OLT because they said it's not in the context. I was curious, like at the OLT, how did it end up getting approved? Because it does look like it's a little bit different, like not this one, I think it was the Nexus slide, where you showed that it was, I think it's the Nexus slide, that one.
Well, no, basically everything was in our favor, because the actual word for word, the official plan says, if you are within the edge of the neighborhoods, you can go up to 4 stories.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but it also says that it has to be within an acceptable context. Now, that opens the door for interpretation, whether you're in the context or you're not in the context. And then you got to also ask the question, which context am I looking for? Today's context, or should we consider the context of what may appear here in 10 years or in 20 years if people are allowed to do 4 stories on the edge of neighborhoods.
Mhm.
And that's where there was a difference of opinion that took us to the OMB at the time. Yeah, although I should mention that this other development,
Yeah, I was just gonna say there is another
yeah,
one.
that one created a big stink because it was something that, again, the developer went to the OLT. They did not have the positive aspects of ours because they weren't even on the edge.
Mhm.
And even they got approved, which made the counselor at the time extremely upset that this happened. Yeah.
So I just want to point out, there was a lot of important points here for anyone that's getting into this space. I guess one is precedence. I guess having this precedence there was very helpful, right? And then
Well, here's the thing about this funny thing about precedence. Every time you want to do something and they don't want you to do it, they say, you know, we can't do it because it sets a precedence. And if every time you want to do something that actually has a precedence, they say, well, precedence doesn't work. No, that was different. That's another site. That's different. That was like 2 meters away. This lot is different. You should not be using precedence for anything. So your guess is as good as mine.
yeah, that's true. But sometimes it helps, right? Like it's this gives you something to argue.
Yeah. No, it at least it gives you a more warm and fuzzy feeling going forward. That
Yeah.
this is something, you know, what that has been done before. So
You
my
got
chances
something
are
to hang
not
on
that
to.
bad.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
got something to say at it. Okay, thank you. Yero, you have your hand up. Go ahead, buddy.
Hello.
Hey, go ahead.
So my name is Sierra. I'm in New Brunswick, so it's not the same zoning or in New Brunswick. But I have a question for you, like an architect. I'm working on one project right now. It's a multiple phase 1, 2, and 3. So it is possible to share that site plan, Ali?
You want to share your screen?
Yes, just
Yeah, you should be able to share your
Oh,
screen, yeah.
Just make sure it's not confidential.
it's not. So
Okay.
this is my site plan I'm working on right now.
Mhm.
I want to do 3 phases on this project. The reason to do that is, especially the 2 building here, is the financing cost. So it's hard to finance 2 building for 150 in the same time. So I want to do that different phase. But my first question with my architect and for you too, what is the big challenge if the building was connected? The building 2 and building 3, or just better to leave some space between the 2 buildings?
Well, the challenge of connecting the building and then you want to connect them and then build them in 2 phases.
Yes, and 2 different elevator stairs. But
Yeah, well, here's the thing. If you connect the building, it is going to be very difficult to build it in 2 phases. Because you're going to have to decide where the joint is, where the construction joint is. And you don't really want to get that close with your construction of phase 2 to your occupied phase 1.
Mhm.
And that's not to mention, what if your next phase goes up in 5 years? What if financing isn't in place for phase 2, not for another 5 years? So what is that half-built building going to look like? Are you going to finish it and then rip out the finishing and attach the next building? So it just doesn't make sense. It is a lot better to just leave some space, adequate space for construction for the occupying of the first building, and then build your next building. You may have the additional cost of the elevators, but the headache is a lot less.
Yeah, excellent. So my second question is to the underground parking.
Mhm.
So here we connect the building the two buildings have a connection with the first.
Yeah, no, this is not a problem. You can actually build right up to the next one.
Okay, yeah.
Or
Okay.
you can actually build it like the one on the right hand and then fill the gap later.
Yeah.
When you build phase 2.
This one too, we was thinking to build all
Yeah,
the.
this is not a problem. What you do is you build your underground and just on the side, let me just mark this up. So what you would do is just right here, instead of doing concrete, you do block walls.
Mhm.
Later on, when you connect these, you just take these block walls out
Okay.
and then you connect them together. But you have to make sure that this middle row has enough width to be as wide as a two-way driveway.
Yes, they make sure of that. So, but
Yeah.
the access, the entrance is one entrance for the whole underground parking, and on your right where you do the mark is the second first floor is this, the other part the building is.
Sorry, which one is phase 1? Which one's phase 2?
Oh, let me go. Yes, building number 2 and building number 3 is a phase. I want to do building number 2 phase 1 and building number 2 phase 2.
So this is phase 1, this is phase 2.
Is 1, 2, 3.
1, 2, and 3. So we're talking about 2 and 3.
2 and 3.
So you're building number 2 first, and then you're building 3.
Yes.
Yeah, that's fine. Just make sure you throw in enough exit stairs and elevators and whatnot that you need. I didn't see anything. Anyhow, this is too detailed a conversation
Yeah.
for
Yeah,
this
pretty
this
detailed,
session.
yeah.
So
We can leave that.
if you want, you can shoot me an email and we can talk about it later.
Thank you.
No, great project here.
Thank you.
Okay, if you wanna, okay, awesome. No, this was really amazing. We went a little over
pleasure.
time. I think it was well worth it. You still have your hand up. Thank you, Hoordad, again. This was really great session. And
pleasure.
I guess we can wrap up the kind of the presentation section. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your time. I know
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you, everybody, for putting up with me tonight.
No, that was awesome. Thank you.
I
We're
have
gonna
one
move to our
question,
next
Hoordad.
section. Oh,
Sure.
sorry.
My
Right? Very
oh,
quick.
30 seconds, maybe you can answer it. I'm from Edmonton. What's the typical you see the time frame for the approval part? Like, I know it's kind of tricky, but it's varies from project to project. But do you see?
Yeah, I am seeing here, depending on, the more aggressive the proposal is compared to what the official plan sees, the more time it'll take for them to approve it.
Mhm.
If it doesn't go to the OT, if it doesn't go to the courts, the most hopeful scenario to get your approvals in place, the rezoning and the site plan approval, is around 2 to 2.5 years. That's the most optimistic. This is what we've seen. 3 to 4 years is more realistic.
Mhm.
Although I have seen projects take as much as 8 to 10 years.
Yeah.
Just because some of them were very aggressive. They wanted to do a lot and the city kept not wanting it and coming up with reasons why. And then halfway through the 5-6 years, the people at the city changed, the councillor changed, their views changed. So everything had to get started all over again. So you don't want to get into that. But normally I would say realistically, you're looking at an average of about 2.5 to 3 years.
Do you see like the counselor or city officials support can make difference, like in getting
Well,
approval?
they are trying to do that, but there is also due process. Because the amount of stuff that you need to supply to the city to prove that what you're changing the use to actually works, you got to show or demonstrate that it actually works. To demonstrate that it works, it has to demonstrate that for instance, the grading works, the stormwater runoff works, the truck maneuvering works, the parking works, the sun shadow analysis works. Everything to show that you need all this work to be done. And now you submit it to the city. Well, the city's got to have time to review it. They can't just wing it. So they need time to send it to the appropriate departments to review it and then come back with comments. So the process is a lengthy process. I don't know how you could make it shorter by just forcing people. You can't really force people to work faster. There's just a lot to do if you want it done properly. Now you can fast track it if you don't care about doing it correctly. So you know what, city, you only have a month to look at it. Okay, well, you can't have quality and speed at the same time. Usually that doesn't happen.
Yeah, it just takes time, and the timelines yeah, thank you, good question, Bhavin. Yeah, timelines between Alberta and Ontario, they're very different. Actually, we just we're wrapping up our rezoning for a mixed use. Speaking of mixed use, high rise in Calgary that actually just went on the market today, but and yeah, city even there wanted to have mixed use. And it's going to be about a year. I was going to show it in the updates, but it just went on the market today. I'm actually going to share it on the update. So this was our land assembly that we did in Calgary. Again, context in the area. We have a mall nearby, and I actually have the brochure here. And so yeah, this was kind of our business update. That's kind of rendering. Allows commercial at the bottom, and yeah, pretty exciting. We actually
absolutely amazing. It's amazing work.
Looks amazing.
Thank you. We have our final council hearing on July 25th, so next week, Tuesday. So keep fingers crossed.
Best of luck to you.
Thank you. But just to make the point, this took almost a year, I guess by July 25th when it's done. And Hoordad, like comparing like the amount of studies and stuff we had to do it's not even comparable. We only had to do traffic impact study and shadow study. That was all they were asking. And yeah, they didn't ask for a lot of details.
But did you get, or you're getting site plan approved without anything else?
No, just rezoning.
Just rezoning. Yeah, well, that I've seen with minimal. Okay. That I've seen with minimal. But to get all the way to the site plan approval, there's a ton of things that you got to do.
Yeah, it's a rezoning, basically zoning bylaw amendment to be technical, and secondary plan amendment. So
for rezoning, you don't even need grading.
No,
you just need some site plan and elevations and some truck maneuvering and just to make sure that the site works.
And also
very
different climate in Calgary, where councillors were actually excited. City was excited. They were like, oh, thank you for, we're excited for your project. And when we did the community engagement, we only had one neighbor showing up. They were concerned a little bit about shadowing and whatnot. But the amazing part was he started his piece with, it's not that I'm against growth and development, but I'm just a little bit concerned about my shadowing on my side. I'm like, the fact they have to say that in the beginning of like their comments, it's such a contrast to Ontario, where people were coming out like guns blazing and stuff.
Trust me, we've been to some of these where it was absolutely hostile.
Yeah.
Like
and that's
150 people
awesome,
show up
yeah.
screaming at the top of their lungs at you, and but that definitely we're used to that. We've seen that a lot.
No, that's awesome. Well, thank you again. So we're going to move to the next stage. We kind of transitioned into it. The next step is, well, we normally have like sometimes deal presentations, but I don't think we have any deals tonight. And then next part is just hanging around, networking. If I would encourage people to, turn on their cameras, and we can network. If anybody has any business updates, I started my business updates. This was exciting news because this went on the market today. But if anybody else is working on projects, I know Yero, you mentioned your massive development in Moncton, so that was exciting to see the site plan on that one. I know you were working on it, and yeah, if anybody wants to, come on and we try to not do like sales pitch. There's a partnership opportunities or anything like that, those are welcome, but we're trying to keep this as an educational and collaboration space. So who wants to go next? Not everybody at once. All right, going once, going twice. I guess everybody wants to go to bed, eh?
Okay, I'll go first.
Okay.
So hi guys, I just want to give you a little introductions. I'm Bhavin, I'm from Edmonton. I am looking to potential development deal in Edmonton. One is 30 plus units, other one is 100 plus units.
Nice.
Seems like it's pretty good potential to it. Zonings are right, so doesn't need zoning change and everything. Yeah, so anybody interested, we can chat about, and yeah, go from there.
Awesome. Yeah, Edmonton is a really interesting market. There's so much development happening there, and there's a lot of demand, same as Calgary. So yeah, that's awesome. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, and something I wanted to know is Edmonton, all zonings pretty much changing pretty soon, hopefully by end of the year. So they're a lot more flexible than what they used to be. So
Go ahead.
I think they have hopefully by October will be the official, we get the approvals. Yeah.
Nice. Is that the one that they're basically removing all zoning restrictions and whatnot?
Yeah, so what is gonna be is currently there's let's say for instance single family zoning, so you can't build like duplex or triplex or fourplex, so it's gonna be much more flexible. So all residential zoning mainly gonna change.
Nice. Yeah,
and it's gonna be more flexible.
Yeah, Edmonton is very progressive. And actually, for those who don't know, that's how I got into land development in 2014-15. I was living in Edmonton, and Edmonton was actually educating the public on infill developments. And at the time, that's where basically caught my attention, because I always liked like building homes and stuff, and it was a kind of a dream for me. And I kind of picked it up there and kind of went their website. They had brochures. They would explain the process and how you do, your application and whatnot. And yeah, so shout out to City of Edmonton for being probably the most progressive city in terms of planning. But a little bit of teaser, I'm gonna actually have one of the guys who used to be a planner in City of Edmonton as a guest speaker in the coming month. He's now, I'm not going to reveal too much, but he's in the private sector now, but he was one of the guys who was involved in that transformation of Edmonton kind of planning philosophy and the zonings. So stay tuned for that. All right, we're going to go to the next person. I'm actually going to stop recording just to save some space on my computer.